Cutzler YMX uses the Netrodyne two-way camera system in all of our power units. The Netrodyne cameras have more than once exonerated a driver who was perceived to be at fault, as well as saved our Cutzler YMX from paying damages related to an accident. We are already seeing, just in 1 year of Netrodyne, the impact of better safety scores and fewer damages and incidents in our insurance rates.
Here we are, and welcome to this Thursday edition, September 19th edition of Freightonomics.
September's flying by.
I mean, doesn't it though, normally? September, the last month
I think so.
of a quarter.
Yeah.
You know, it tends to go pretty quick for me. August goes quick too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just...
Maybe I'm just old and it goes by fast all the time now.
Yeah, I mean, August felt slow. September has felt extremely fast. I mean, what? We've got one more show after this one for the month?
That's true. Yeah. Well, welcome to Freightonomics, our second to last show of the month of September that is flying by. Zach Strickland, head of market intelligence, Tony Mulvey, senior analyst, and we are going to have a guest today on our show. Thanks to our sponsor, Netrodyne, for providing us with a guest and a talking topic. It is Driver Appreciation Week.
It is.
So what better time to discuss the appreciation of drivers than with our sponsor, Netrodyne, who, of course, specializes in the technology that helps improve driver safety.
Absolutely. So remove the guesswork from driver management and fleet safety and start predicting your accident reduction cost savings. Netrodyne's AI-enabled video platform corrects unsafe driving habits, recognizing and reinforcing great driving. With a green zone score, your fleet of engaged drivers will protect your bottom line. Every 50 points earned is a 14% cut to your accident rate.
Yeah, and we will talk to Miss Ofelia Chernock here in just a few minutes. But first, Tony, let's give the people a little bit of an update on the freight market. We're going to also discuss a little bit about the Fed rate cut here later in the show, as well as the ILA strike updates.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that. But first,
you're marketing too, so I'll count you in 3, 2, 1.
All right, let's lead things off with the tender rejection index. You know, I've been leading off with this. A little bit of a concerning factor here. Sorry, drivers. The tender rejection index not really showing that the market is tightening. You know, we're below the 2019 threshold now, which is of concern considering 2019 market was a very soft year for freight in general. All hope is not lost, however, as the holiday period still appears to be in play. We had a hurricane in 2019 that did influence. That's why you see that little bit of a tower there, but we're above year over year. The market is progressing in a tighter direction, just not a strong signal at this point in time. Let's go to the next chart. Break it down into tender rejection rates for both van, there in the white line, and then refrigerated tender rejection rates in the blue line. The refrigerated market does appear to be moving directionally in a tighter space. It is not breaking loose by any breath, but it is moving in a tighter direction relatively quickly. Now, it is a lower density tender volume in the overall index, so it is a little bit more volatile because of that, but it is moving in a different direction than the dry van, which since the middle of the summer has been going slowly downward in the overall signal. Let's go to the next chart here. Look at the spot rates for both dry van and refrigerated truckloads. The signal is the exact same. Refrigerated moving higher, van moving lower. We do have a near-term signal here that the refrigerated sector may not be holding on as strongly as it was just a week ago. Spot rates falling down a little bit, but it is still doing a directional tightening movement. Let's go to the next couple of maps here. Refrigerated spot rates, what's driving that tightness? All in the Pacific Northwest. If you look at the blue, that is our market conditions map. Anything in blue means significant increases over the last 4 days. Let's go to the next and last map here. The van markets, similar-ish, though a little bit more dispersed across the mountain regions with the increases. Yeah. Everything else in red is down.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's a challenge. It continues to be a challenging market, I think, is the takeaway. I think the positive sign is if you look at the reefer and the van rejection index, specifically the reefer, like it had been declining really all of this time last year all the way through into kind of May. I mean, it was more volatile during, call it the winter months, but largely down, and it's since recovered in some meaningful way, right? I mean, you're back right around 10%. I think it fell back below that 10% threshold this week, but overall, it's directionally moving higher.
We have to keep in mind, too, that we're talking about near and long-term directional signals here. In the long run, the long-term signals are still moving in a tighter direction. Year over year, rejection rates are up. Week over week, maybe month over month to an extent, rejection rates for dry van are down. So, like, you have to be... Yes, we're in the moment. You know, a lot of us in the transportation sector live week to week. That's how we look at most of our reports. Most of the reports I used to generate, weekly reports. You get lost in the near term because that's the easiest to relate to. But year over year, we're still on course for a directional tightening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, without further ado, it is Driver Appreciation Week, so I want to, of course, bring on our next guest, Ofelia Chernock, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Netrodyne, as aforementioned, our sponsor, and she's going to help us shine a little bit of a light on what Netrodyne does, as well as some of the strategies that they employ, some of the things that, discuss some of the things that they talk to their customers about in terms of driver safety and how to improve that with positive reinforcement. So, Ofelia, thank you for joining us today.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if you want to, of course, elaborate on anything I just said, introduce yourself and your company, maybe shine a little bit more light on it first, and then we'll start with the questions.
Of course, I'm happy to. Netrodyne is, we've been around maybe 15 years now, and we are still a very agile company. We focus... Being advocates for drivers is very near and dear to our hearts. We focus a lot of our efforts on making sure that the driver has a positive experience, not just the managers at the fleet and the fleet in general, but the drivers very specifically. As this week is, of course, Driver Appreciation Week, we know that drivers are the lifeblood of our country and many other countries across the globe. So we want to make sure that they are appreciated and do feel as though they are recognized and appreciated for all of their hard work. And we do that with several solutions. We have our fleet safety solution, which is, top of the ranks. In my mind, of course, maybe I'm a little biased, but top of the ranks. But from the perspective of we focus on just advocating for the drivers, showing the fleets and the managers the complete picture of that driver's profile. So not just the risk, but also how they perform from a safety compliance perspective on the road.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it there. I mean, fleets across the country right now, you're seeing things like barbecues, things for drivers, giving out prizes. What does Netrodyne do? I know we've talked previously about the in-cab video platform and kind of green zones. Can you kind of expand on what Netrodyne does to show driver appreciation?
Of course. The in-cab alerts themselves are gentle reminders. We try not to make this all about, the risk. Yes, it's very, very critical to understand the risk that's associated in that environment, in that moment. But we try to make it more about, hey, so you missed a couple of stop signs. That's okay. You faced 100 in that day, right? It's more about, you were compliant, road safety compliance, X amount of percentage points, right? So that's where the green zone score comes in. It is a weighted score. It takes into consideration things like following distance, the behaviors that will cause or have the potential to cause a collision or increase the risk, right? So it's weighted more towards that. However, drivers can earn what we call driver stars for their green zone score, which elevates their green zone score by 50 points maximum. And those things are stop sign compliance over a period of time that they, say, how many stop signs do we encounter on a day? Just regular drivers, right? And they are on the road all day, every day. So they encounter a lot of stop signs, for example. So they have the ability to come to a complete stop. When they do that consecutively over a period of time, we reward them. Everything's done on the edge, and by that I mean in the actual camera that's on their windshield. It's called the driver eye. Everything is processed on the edge, so it's automatic. It pops up with a great job on creating separation. For example, if you're merging onto, if a car is merging onto the highway and they create space, or they back off their speed a little bit to enable that driver to come in safely. Those kinds of things, we recognize that. It's automated. The fleet manager doesn't, or the safety manager doesn't have to get involved in those kinds of things. But it does pop up in the dashboard. The Netrodyne portal, they can see that when that happens, the managers can. The drivers also have complete transparency to their own data, their own information, their own video through the Driver Eye mobile app. So we really do, as I've mentioned before, and I'll probably say it 1,000 more times in the minutes that we have together, we really do advocate for the drivers. We want to make sure the driver has a positive experience with the camera in the vehicle. We know it's a little unsettling at first. We know that, it feels like they're being watched. They're not. It is simply analyzing what is happening in and around them so that we can help a fleet exonerate their driver or prove what actually happened in that moment, and quickly resolve, litigations if it comes to that, or just claims in general.
Yeah,
I'll leave it there.
Yeah, we talked to Adam a few weeks ago about the litigation component and the risk involved there, and these cameras obviously can help significantly with that.
Yes.
And so, but I really like the fact that you guys are very focused on the kind of the positive reinforcement values. Like, also, I'm a data guy, so I kind of geek out when I see that you guys have an ability to show stats. It's kind of like, the drivers are out there on the roads. I mean, I used to talk to drivers all day long in my former life, and it's very lonely, and it can be a little bit taxing on their brain and their emotional well-being. So hearing some positive reinforcement at the same time is kind of gently reminding them, like, hey, you're doing a good job, or like, when you're fleet managers, they have to get involved. That is an experience or an exchange that typically isn't received as positively. So I really like the idea that technology kind of removes that human interaction component a little bit, because it isn't easy from the driver manager perspective to have some of those conversations. So I really like that. And of course, I want to learn more about what you guys do for the driver experience while in the cab, because that to me is kind of, they're disconnected from the world, if you will. So I'd love to hear more about what you guys do to really help improve the in-cab experience for the driver.
Of course. It goes back to those in-cab audio alerts, right? So a great example is we do actually spend time talking to our customers and the market, and we listen. We spend a lot of time listening. One of the things that our customers asked for was drivers prefer a female voice in the in-cab for the in-cab alert. We made that happen. We have a female voice that, reminds them that they need to put their seatbelt on, or their following distance is a little too close. They probably should back off a little bit. But it's a friendly, gentle female voice that lets them know that they're,
like
potentially
Siri and Alexa,
creating risk.
Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And then, but from the coaching perspective, it to your point, it removes the friction, right? So there's very limited need for a fleet manager to get involved. Drivers can self-coach in that moment. They get that reminder. They can create that following distance. They can create that space. They can come to a complete stop, whatever the case may be. They see the pedestrian up ahead. If that's what they're, in the moment doing, they're making a delivery, there's a pedestrian in the road, or there's, and they have the opportunity to make that change. And we enable that for them in the moment, in the cab, all the time, right? So we give them a grace period as well, to be able to correct that risky driving behavior that they're experiencing in that moment, before we even alert the managers and the fleet in the portal. So they have a lot of ability to kind of eliminate that risk, and just avoid the face-to-face, oh dear, I've been called into the principal's office feeling, that just goes away entirely with Netrodyne.
That's awesome. I think I see it on social media a lot, is drivers pushing back around cameras and thinking the privacy element of it. I mean, can you kind of touch on like what is that pushback like from drivers, and then kind of how's it evolve over time?
Fabulous question. And yes, it's a big concern, right? You're watching me. Again, cameras for the most part are not watching. It's not just Netrodyne, but most cameras are not necessarily watching. There isn't someone sitting at a desk watching their every move. It's just not how it works. Most especially with Netrodyne, just because a lot of what we capture and analyze is done on the edge. So the ability that we have to present both the risk and the safety aspect of the driver's profile is because we analyze 100% of the driving time, we're the only vendor that can do that. But we do take into consideration a driver's privacy concerns, right? We understand it, we get it. So what we have available is the driver can put a lens cap on the driver-facing camera. That's just an option. In addition, we have several configurable options available for as part of our privacy feature. Again, it depends, because we are global, we work in very many countries. We understand that there's a need to kind of disable the recording function altogether from the driver-facing camera. Yes, we can do that, and on top of that, we're still able to capture the metadata behind it, so that we can still present the holistic picture of what actually happened in that moment, right? So we have the ability to really meet the customer's needs, regardless of their policies, their region that they're in, whatever they have to work with from a regulatory perspective. We are there to help them and work with them to make sure that the driver eye is set up and provisioned accordingly and configured accordingly. From the perspective of kind of driver pushback, yes, we found that in our experience, we found that most drivers tend to push back at the onset of implementing the cameras in the vehicles. Once they've kind of lived with it for a couple of weeks, they're like, oh, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought it might be. And they get more accustomed to having it there. After what our data shows is after about 2 months or maybe 3 months, the feedback from the drivers is that they're no longer worried about it. They see its value. They can hit that button underneath the driver eye. There's a gray button that they can hit to kind of capture if there's road rage. If there's a driver that just kind of pulled in front of them and came to a hard brake and they had no choice but to brake really, really hard, or swerve or do whatever they needed to do to avoid that collision, right? They can hit that button and capture that moment. If they are making a delivery and something's not right, or they're stuck at a port and they're, stuck there for 2 hours and that just messes everything else up, they can hit that button and it shows that they did all the things that they needed to do. It's just there's a situation that's out of their control. We can capture that for them. And it becomes more of a wingman, a co-pilot, rather than a negative experience.
Yeah, it's kind of a support structure versus like somebody that's there to kind of criticize you, which I really like that iteration, because anybody knows driver retention is one of the hardest things to accomplish in this industry, and making sure that they feel appreciated and also supported is extremely important there. And it can also cut down the bottom line. So I want to transition into the fleet manager aspect of this. We've talked about them a little bit. These are the ones that are really out there engaging with the drivers. How do you see them taking advantage of this type of technology?
Absolutely. So the Netrodyne portal is everything is available to a driver in the Mobileye app, their own data, and to a fleet manager in the Netrodyne portal. So they can break it down by group, they can break it down by region, however they need to break it down, so that they see their drivers in the way that they need to see them, they have that ability to be able to run reports like that if that's what they're looking to do, or they can see the dashboard right up front. So from a fleet manager or safety manager perspective, the Netrodyne homepage, the portal homepage shows their overall green zone score for their fleet. So they, you right up front, you set it at whatever they're comfortable with. We believe that a score of 850 is kind of the right goal before you kind of start increasing it incrementally to make sure that you're even safer and able to adjust those behaviors so that they're less risky and more safe. But their fleet score is up on their Netrodyne portal. They can instantly see which of their drivers are reaching that score and exceeding that score. They can quickly see which of their drivers are having a little bit of a wobble and need some assistance. It's AI-powered recommended coaching that basically says, hey, Ofelia Chernock, she's got a really big lead foot and it's just not working for her. She's, speeding in these areas. You may need to have a quick, virtual coaching, remote coaching session with her just to kind of have her understand that she needs to lay off that lead foot of hers. And it's really, again, it's frictionless. It shows the video evidence so that you can always have something to show. It's not just, well, this is what I see. You may see something differently. No, they see the same things. And then they can use that green zone score and that information in their coaching sessions and in their onboarding and training sessions. So here's a great example, if they pick up a video, here's a great example of where a driver did something really good, really well. And here's what we expect our drivers to emulate. And then you've also got, this is where we had, a particular situation. I'm essentially trying to say that there are examples. They have quick access to the videos. They can use it fleet managers can use it in their training purposes and in their onboarding purposes. And additionally, they can use the green zone score to really fuel their incentive programs or their reward programs. Some of our customers have shared that they don't use any prizes at all. They don't have an incentive program. They just simply rely on bragging rights. So Ofelia Chernock did really well. She avoided a pedestrian. Here's the video. And they just have that on loop at the company, right? And that's the extent of that. Other companies, other customers of ours, other fleets have said, yep, we do a $25,000 reward at the end of the year for the top performer. Some say $25 monthly gift card. It really depends on how they want to use the information that they have at their fingertips. And again, at Netrodyne, we provide all of that information in a very succinct manner, in a very easy to understand. The green zone score is explainable. It is super easy to understand. Here's what happened. Here's how you lost points. Here's how you gained points. This is what your overall score is. Here's how you compare to the overall fleet.
I think it's awesome.
Well, thank you for all that, Ofelia. And of course, tell everybody where to reach out and find you.
Of course, just visit Netrodyne.com and you will find all of our information there. You can get a demo. You can click and get a demo. You can click and watch some videos. Yep, Netrodyne.com.
All right, there you go. Well, thank you so much, and happy Driver Appreciation Week to you. Keep all those drivers happy and positively reinforced in this very challenging freight market environment that they are finding themselves in.
Yeah, I mean, I look at to talk about rewards from fleet managers. I mean, I think that idea of the top performer gets, 25 grand, that seems like a pretty solid recruiting and retention tool, right? Like if you're right there, it's kind of like dangling the carrot in front of him, making kind of run faster.
Well, it makes the fleet manager's job easier too.
Yeah.
You have actual facts in front of you, data that you can look at as well. That kind of it's objective. It's something we deal with all the time here at FreightWaves.
Yeah.
We talk about the data. It's objective. Like it is the number. Now numbers can be manipulated and misrepresented all the time. But if you understand the context of those numbers, and where they're coming from, then
yeah, it gives you that ability to take it and run with it and make actionable decisions or the coaching element, right? Like it teaches you where to focus that in on.
Yeah.
So overall, I think.
Well, there was a number that is of massive importance today, especially after yesterday. Now, the Fed cut 50 basis points for the non-financially market-driven folk. So this is a pretty large cut.
It is extremely large. I think going back the last time they cut this large call it the first time they cut interest rates was back in 2007.
Yeah.
So it was, I don't want to say unexpected. I think most people were expecting 50 basis points, but it was kind of this like push and pull of, are we getting 25? Are we getting 50? You had U.S. senators calling for 75, which the second that happened, you knew you weren't getting 75.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal because it's a very aggressive cut and it seems very quick. I think it's almost like a reaction to we should have cut in July. We didn't. Now let's make up for the lack of that cut. Instead of doing, 25 basis point cuts in July and September, you get 50 basis points in September. You also get the dot plot, which I think is interesting for the sole fact it's where do they see interest rates headed over the long term. Basically forecast another 50 basis points reduction, whether that's 2 25 basis point cuts, 1 50 basis point cut by the end of the year. So, I mean, they're clearly...
That's quick.
Fed officials are clearly in the mindset of, hey, we're going to reduce this by 100 basis points very rapidly. And then by the end of next year, it's 100 basis points below that. So slowing that rate of decline next year.
I mean, I think economically speaking, this is two things. So I'll talk about the overall economy first, and then the transportation-centric part second, which one feeds the other. I think the manufacturing sector now has a little bit of room to breathe in terms of CapEx expenditures. I don't know that it's necessarily going to make a huge impact this year in overall spend. The retail sector came out overachieved in August, according to some of the latest reports. So that's what really fuels the second half of the year, economically speaking. So I don't know that I would expect too much extra activity out of this from that component. So therefore, the transportation market kind of is what it is at this point. From that perspective, we've got retail peak on the docket. We got a lot of freight coming into the country still, record imports. And then we've, of course, got the ILA strike situation, which... Now, the latest news report here, Grace Sharkey wrote an article here. Does the ILA have a point in objecting to automation? Not really. A long game here is that they absolutely are being hyperbolic and being probably a little bit too protective of the status quo, which actually hurts them in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, her article is fantastic, by the way, if you haven't read it. But I mean, the sticking point has been around the Port of Mobile and this AutoGate, which existed, and it's not fully autonomous, right? It's not fully it's semi-automated. ILA workers have to manually check this. Yeah, hasn't so, and in their master contract that they were operating under, it only talked about fully autonomous or automated processes. This is not one of those.
Yeah, and of course, the biggest news to come out of the ILA this week is that report Biden won't block dock strike. So Joe Biden, of course, saying they're not going to implement the Taft-Hartley Act, which grants presidents powers to intervene in labor disputes that threaten national security or safety by imposing an 80-day cooling off period and forcing employees back to work while negotiations continue. So him coming out and saying that, basically, it actually gives a little bit more clarity around the possibilities of what we expect to happen. If he doesn't come out and shut it down, you've got a one-day strike. That Mike Baudendistel actually gave some of these numbers here. One-day strike would take 5 days to clear. 1 week strike would cause supply chain slowdowns until mid-November. 2 week strike wouldn't be cleared until 2025.
And I think what's interesting here is, one, this gives it just fuels the fire of the ILA to basically they now hold the leverage, right? The risk appears to
They're clearly trying to really incite some emotional activity.
Yeah.
Because the numbers that I just said are alarming.
And well, I think that's the one, that and the timing of it could not be arguably, it's like the worst time possible for, especially if you're a retailer trying to move freight into the country.
And they've been doing that.
Yeah, they have been. But then the time sensitivity ramps up real quick here in the next few weeks.
Oh man, in our show next week, we're going to be right on the edge.
Yeah, so we'll really know how this starts playing out.
Ooh, man.
It's always something.
It's always something. Never a dull moment in a supply chain. Everybody have a great week.